From the business news to the newspapers, Catherine Viette is here with us this morning. I want to see you, Catherine. You're going to take us through the French front pages and, of course, these protests yesterday dominating the press. Those protests, of course, against the changes to the country's labour laws.
Big story here. French never shy about taking to the streets to express their displeasure. And Le Monde reporting that yesterday, between 224,000 to 500,000 people turned out across France to demonstrate against these labor reforms. The front page of the paper has a sort of interesting graphic as to where you can see, that's the humanity, here we go, that you can see where the manifestations, where the demonstrations took place. Obviously, Paris, the biggest one, they're saying between 27,000 and 100,000. Now, the number's a little all over the place here. The Interior Ministry says it was 224,000, while the student unions, government, and other unions say that number bigger, closer to 500,000. If we move on now to Humanité and see their front page, there's a big photo of people demonstrating in the street, and their headline says already 500,000, so they're going with the union figure as to the numbers who came out. The paper says that the demonstrations were a remarkable success, and it says the protesters are determined that they're not going to let the government trick them.
Well, that's the line from the Communist paper. It's hardly surprising they're going with the higher figure, is it? But the papers on the whole are predicting a tough time ahead for the government, regardless on which end of the political spectrum they're on.
That's right. Libération has a warning on its front page. It says work law, basically a warning. And it's a bit surprising because this is sort of the left-leaning paper, so it usually kind of supports the initiatives that the government puts forth. And the paper goes on to say, now this case, more than 200,000 demonstrated against, so they're going with the government figures, but still a worrying kickoff for the government here, and says, well, it's been less than a tsunami, bigger than a ripple. These demonstrations hanging over the heads of the French president and Manuel Valls, especially now that second demonstrations have been called, another round of demonstrations has been called. And it says that once the genie of young demonstrators has been let out of the bottle, it's going to be hard to put them back in. Aujourd'hui en France talks about this as, again, a first round, so a bit of another kickoff, and calls yesterday's demo significant, but not enough to make the government change its course yet. Inside, there's an editorial cartoon, and this illustrates, you can see right there, illustrates some of the problems around this. There's a man holding a sign, and it just says work, and someone's asking him, it says, you know, your sign isn't clear. Are you for or against the reforms? So this goes back to the idea that people know the system isn't working, but they're not sure if this is the right path.
Okay, well, the French business papers are also weighing in on this, aren't they, Catherine?
Yes, Les Echos on its front page says that Hollande is going to be willing to make concessions, and it goes on to say that, you know, France here is at the risk of rising dissent, more protests, and the government's in the hot seat over this. L'Opinion says that, well, strong opposition or not, concessions or not, the battle against the reforms, once again, reflects a denial of reality, and it's a crisis of representation and a general lack of confidence in the future in a country that's now sort of become undermined by distrust. Their cartoon there features a pollster asking Marianne, she's the symbol of France, you know, what are your thoughts on these reforms? It's a multiple choice. A, is it an error? B, it's useless. 3, it's impossible. Or finally, is it a provocation?
Okay, and just quickly, Catherine, the former president, Nicolas Sarkozy, has also been weighing in with his take on the situation.
Yeah, he gave an exclusive interview to Le Monde, and he says, you know, all of this surrounding this, it kind of has the atmosphere of the end of a reign, of things coming to a close, and he's sure that this proposal will give birth to a mouse. So in other words, you know, it's going to be all talk and promises, but nothing will end up being delivered. And he also went on to say that if he were president, he'd eliminate 300,000 public sector jobs. But that's, of course, if he gets elected.
If he gets elected. And, of course, important to remember that he tried to do these labour reforms and failed when he was president. Thank you for that, Catherine Viette, taking us through the French press.